Welcome. My emphasis here in this quick tutorial on Google Fonts is not so much shopping for fonts, but implementing them in your website. So we're going to skip the whole process of looking at fonts, deciding do you like them, don't you like them, changing the size to see what they look like as headlines or whatever. We're going to assume that you have already done your shopping, or you're a designer and you're coming to the site and you know what font you want. And that's my situation here. I'm working with the designer, hypothetically, but actually happened recently. And the designer chose Lato font for branding for both print and web. Lato is a great font, translates very well between print and web. So I'm going to implement that style on a website, and the thing that I want to highlight first of all is that I'm selecting all the available styles to give myself the most freedom to be creative and do some subtle styling with typography. Adding all these different styles doesn't add to download time on your website because Google is storing all these fonts. You could download them, you could put them at your server. I don't see any need for that. Google's server is probably more reliable than yours and downloads faster. So just let that be. And but they're free. So get them all. So I've got them all, and then when I view my selected fonts, I get two basic approaches to getting the CSS and the HTML code that I want. Well, really, there's one approach to the HTML, but we'll focus on that later. I think in most cases you're going to want to use the @import option. That can be used to bring these links to these styles into your external CSS file. So I've copied them. Let's jump over to my CSS file. And before we do that, let me show you my HTML file. So there's nothing to it. It's got a heading, a paragraph. I made the text a little bigger, grabbed a couple colors for foreground and background in the CSS just to make it a little more palatable. But we've got a heading. As you can see, I've got a paragraph with a word in boldface and a paragraph with a word in italics. And if I preview how that looks, it looks like this. Now, where did that sans-serif font come from? Well, in my CSS file, I knew that I wanted Lato, but my browsing environment, and really as far as I know, no browsing environment supports Lato natively. It has to be supported with an external font. So the next step, and just to complete that point, the browser defaulted to sans-serif. So now, and I always add that import from Google at the top of my CSS. I haven't really researched if that's necessary, but I've bumped into problems when I haven't. So now that I am importing Lato font, let's see what happens when I preview my browser. Now look closely because Lato is not that different from organic or from generic sans-serif, but you can see it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit lighter. If I go back and make sure that I've saved my code, then the Lato now is applying. But I didn't have to fake that code. I could have gotten it, and probably should have gotten it, directly from Google. So this I add to my style sheet. And they've done a little cleaner version of this by putting Lato in quotes. And just double check and make sure that I'm still getting a Lato. Nope. So better find out what went wrong. Font family. Sometimes when you copy code, Well, that's interesting. The quotes that they want. Oh, I see. Copied it twice. Okay. Well, so you got to experience a little troubleshooting there. Font family Lato. All right. Copying and pasting code. Make sure you get it right. Do I have it right yet? Let's find out. Oh, this has been such a valuable troubleshooting experience. Let's go back to Google Fonts, get the whole thing, and just paste that from start to finish in here. Oh, okay, so you got to work through that all with me, and hopefully there was something to learn from that. So here's our nice clean Lato now, and I just made sure that I did my copying and pasting properly. Now let's get our money's worth out of the different font weights that we grabbed. So here you can see boldface is a little bolder, emphasis is a little, well, it's italics. Let's say, for example, that we want to make our heading 1 a little bit lighter than a typical heading. So we'll dial that down from a standard 700 to 400. And let's see what that effect looks like. Well, that's quite clean, but if we're going to do that, we'll probably want to also dial down the font weight of paragraphs, and 400 standard. Let's see what 300 looks like. And we're only able to get away with this again because we grabbed all the different font weights when we were generating the URL link. So dialing that down to 300 does create a little bit more, a little bit lighter look for our page. And just to experiment here, if we go back and take a look at our font, we could make the bold, maybe, you know, if for some reason we wanted to make bold, like really bold, we might do, now to me that's a little heavy duty, but there might be a reason you'd want to do that. So what are the takeaways here besides learning from me and being careful about copying and pasting? Well, let's go back to Google Fonts and review. First of all, I chose a font. Second of all, I selected every different weight to give myself more styling flexibility. And then I could double check and make sure that I had selected them all. In almost every case, you'll want to use import instead of link. Sometimes in WordPress, I might have a page where I want to just have a special font, and then I'll just paste this into that page. But more likely, I'm going to take this into my style sheet in whatever environment I'm working in. Grab the whole thing, put it at the top of my CSS file, and then use this to apply the font family to the whole page. Once I've done that, I can experiment with different font weights, and that opens up some new typographical options, which aren't that impressive here because there's nothing going on the page, but you can use your creativity and envision how being able to wield different font weights can open up some creative opportunities in design.